Welcome to a slow, beginner-friendly lesson on the whole journey and what comes next, made for absolute beginners. End of Phase A. Today we close the chapter. We look back at every skill you collected, from your first variable to your first deployed tool. Then we look forward, where Python takes you next, and what the phases ahead will open for you. This lesson is a recap, not a new topic. There is nothing here you have not already met. The point is to feel the shape of the journey, so you know what you can already do, and what the natural next steps are. Pause and look back. If you want to keep practicing after this lesson, start a project shaped like this. A folder called my_toolkit. Inside, the pieces you have learned to expect, pyproject.toml, .env, .gitignore, the .github workflows folder for continuous integration, your source code under src, and tests in their own folder. You do not need to invent anything new. Pick a small problem you care about and apply everything you know. A starter to keep practicing. Create the starter with UV space in it. Add the libraries you already met in this chapter, requests, python-.env, and click. Add the dev tools you learned to rely on, PyTest for tests and Rough for linting. Then create the standard folders, source, tests, and the workflows folder for continuous integration. Every command here is one you have run before. That is the whole point. You know this routine now. Commands you already know. Run the tool with UV space run space python-m. Run the tests with UV space run space pytest. Lint the code with UV space run space rough space check. Commit and push, and continuous integration runs in the cloud. 4 commands. You have used every one of them in earlier lessons. By now they should feel like home. The starter is just a place to keep practicing while we look back at the journey. A routine you own. Pause for a moment at the top of the hill. Look at the road you have already walked. The road behind. Look back at the very start. We asked what Python is and what a program is. You learned variables, assignment, and how to name them well. You met the built-in types, integers, strings, booleans, floats, and none. You learned the operators, arithmetic and comparison, and how to combine expressions. At the time, each piece felt small. Together they are the alphabet of every line of Python you will ever write. The alphabet of Python, phase of point 3 was the first big jump. You learned functions, named, reusable blocks of work. Define with def, call by name. You learned parameters, return values, body, and indentation. You also met IPython as your exploratory shell, the place where you try ideas before committing them to a file. Functions are where you stopped writing scripts and started writing programs. Where scripts became programs. Phase of point 4 opened the world of libraries and objects. You learned the difference between the standard library, which ships with Python, and third-party libraries, which you install with UV. You met the import statement, the single word that brings a module into your code. You learned that values are often objects, with attributes that hold data and methods that do work. And you practiced the distinction between a method, called on a value, and a function, called by name. This was the moment Python stopped being a calculator and became an ecosystem. Where Python became an ecosystem, somewhere in the middle, the pieces started talking to each other. That is when it clicked. When it clicked, phase of point 5 was the heart of everyday Python. You met the 4 collection types, lists, dictionaries, sets, and tuples. You learned for loops to walk through them, and if, else, and a lift to branch your logic. You practiced choosing the right collection by asking practical questions. Do I need order, lookup, uniqueness, or immutability? Almost every program you will ever write uses these tools. Everyday Python, phase of point 6 connected your code to the disk. You learned to read and write text files, to navigate paths with pathlib, and to work with JSON and CSV, the 2 most common structured data formats. Phase of point 7 opened the internet. You learned what an API is, the basics of HTTP, and how the requests library makes a real network call. You also learned to handle errors when the network misbehaves. Out to disk and network, you built a real tool. You wrote tests. You earned the word developer. You earned the word. Phase of point 8 took you into persistence and safety. You learned why databases beat plain files for stored data, and you used SQLite to create tables and run select, insert, and update queries. You met hashing concepts and used hashlib, and you learned the basics of encryption and password hashing. Security is not a separate topic. It is a habit you build from the first line of code you write. Memory and safety. Phase of point 9 and 10 turned you from a script writer into a developer. You learned PyTest to write and run tests. You learned pyproject.toml to declare and package a project. You met click to turn functions into commands. You handled secrets safely with .env files. You automated tests with GitHub Actions. And in the capstone, you combined all of it into one small real tool. That is the full shape of a modern Python project. From scripter to developer, notice what changed in you, not just in your code. You stopped trying to memorize syntax and started reading error messages. You stopped writing one long script and started splitting work into small modules. You stopped asking does it work and started asking where is its test. You stopped saving everything for the end and started committing small, pushing often. None of these habits appeared in a single lesson. They grew across the chapter, the way real skills always do. Skills, not just syntax. The skills you have form a map. The map shows you where Python can take you next. Every region visited, see the whole journey at a glance. It starts with single values, then grows into variables and types. Functions let you name and reuse work. Collections let you hold many values at once. Loops and conditions let you walk and branch through them. Files and structured data connect your code to the disk. APIs connect it to the internet. Databases give it memory. Security gives it safety. Tests, packaging, and continuous integration turn scripts into a real tool. Each step felt small. The chain is enormous. Small steps, big chain. Look at the mistakes you now know how to avoid. You no longer mix types carelessly, because you understand what Python will and will not coerce. You check for none before using a value that might be missing. You never hardcode a secret in source code, because you have seen how .env keeps it safe. And you do not skip tests with the excuse of just this once, because you have learned that untested code is a future bug. Each habit came from a specific lesson. Together they protect everything you build. Hard-won lessons. Lay your skills out as a map. On one side, the language itself, types, functions, collections, loops, conditions. On another, the data layer, files, JSON, CSV, databases. On another, the network layer, APIs, HTTP, requests. On another, the safety layer, hashing, encryption, secrets. And holding it all together, the craft layer, tests, packaging, continuous integration, and a working CLI. Every serious Python project lives somewhere on this map. You have visited every region. A map you can read. Phase A was the foundation. The horizon ahead is wide, bright, and entirely yours. The wide bright ahead, count the skills you now own. You manage projects and dependencies with UV. You build command line interfaces with Click. You use VS Code as your editor. You write makefile targets for runnable tasks. You generate project scaffolds with Cookie Cutter. You version your work with Git. And in this chapter you added tests, packaging, secrets handling, and continuous integration. The cloud skills, Boto 3 and AWS CLI, are the natural next step. You have already earned the word developer. Count them out loud. Some habits from this chapter should now feel automatic. You name things clearly, because you will read this code again. You split concerns into small modules, because each file should have one job. You handle errors with clear messages, because confused users leave. You never hardcode secrets, because Git never forgets. You write a test for every piece of logic, because untested code is broken code. And you commit small, push often, and let continuous integration watch your back. These are the habits of a professional. What you do without thinking. Where do you go from here? The natural next step is the cloud. You take a small Python tool, like the capstone, and put it somewhere it can run even when your laptop is closed. AWS Lambda runs your Python functions on demand, billed by the millisecond. Boto 3 is the Python SDK for AWS, the library you use to talk to AWS from inside your code. And Pulumi lets you describe your cloud infrastructure in Python itself, instead of clicking through a web console. The same language, a much bigger stage. The cloud is next. The wider curriculum opens many doors. You can build web services with Flask or Fast API, turning functions into endpoints anyone on the internet can call. You can analyze data with pandas and notebooks, the daily work of a data scientist. You can write automation that runs on a schedule and responds to events. You can package your code into containers and deploy it to Kubernetes. And you can step into machine learning fundamentals and AI tools. Every one of these directions uses the foundation you built in Phase A. The hard part is behind you. Many doors are open. Hold the takeaway. Phase A gave you the complete foundation of modern Python. The language core, the data layer, the network layer, the safety layer, and the craft layer. Every future phase of your journey, from cloud to web to data to AI, builds directly on this base. You are not a beginner anymore. You are a developer with a working toolkit and a map of where to go next. Pick a direction that excites you, and keep building. You are a developer now. Thanks for walking the whole journey. The foundation is yours. See you in the next phase. See you in the next phase.